as amended is therefore agreed to. That concludes decision time. We will now move on to members' business. Members who leave the chamber should do so quickly and quietly.
The final item of business today is the members' business debate on motion number S4M06401 in the name of Mary Scanlon on the importance of the Freshwater-Pearl-Mussel. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would be grateful if those members who wish to speak could press the request to speak buttons now. And I call on Mary Scanlon to open the debate. 7 minutes, please.
Some weeks ago, a member of my staff said that Scottish Environmental Link had called to ask if I would be a species champion. I agreed, and then received another call to say I was the champion for the Freshwater-Pearl-Mussel. I thought it was perhaps due to my party's affection for twin sets and pearls, but I have to confess, Presiding Officer, I could not even borrow a Scottish freshwater pearl necklace or brooch for this debate. Even the Mrs. Carlaws could not oblige. I did not know much about the Freshwater-Pearl-Mussel, also known as Margarita Ferra, when I became species champion, but was pleased to know that it could have been the narrow-headed ant, which was given to my colleague Jamie McGregor. So, like many people, I thought the Freshwater-Pearl-Mussel existed to produce fine pearl jewellery. How wrong could I have been? In fact, it is their attractiveness as fine items of jewellery that is one of the major factors leading to their decline, even though only about 1% of freshwater mussels contain a pearl. In terms of background, the oldest living specimen known was 134 years old, and in the last 100 years, more than one-third of rivers in Scotland that used to contain freshwater pearl mussels no longer do so. A further third only contain non-productive mussels, leaving only one-third left with a productive population. And during the last century, there was evidence that pearl mussels became extinct in an average of 2 rivers every year. Despite being fully protected since 1998, large numbers are still killed illegally each year in Scotland. The ongoing threat to this species has made this mussel a UK wildlife crime priority, with risks including habitat degradation, water pollution, declining population of the fish hosts and climate change. But this is critical to us in Scotland. Of the world's 200 rivers in the whole world known to host breeding populations of freshwater pearl mussels, 72 are here in Scotland, one-third of the world's population. So Scotland is the global stronghold for the freshwater pearl mussel to the extent that it is now listed by the IUCN as critically endangered alongside giant pandas. The presence of the freshwater pearl mussel in any river depends on the host salmon availability, and the present declines in stocks of host migratory salmonid fish threaten Scottish pearl mussel populations. In the first year, the pearl mussel harmlessly lives on the gills of a young salmon and trout, and in terms of payback for their first year living on the fish, they filter and purify about 50 litres of water every day, allowing the fish to survive in clean river water. River engineering and illegal pearl fishing has been responsible for the decline and extinction of many freshwater pearl mussel populations and is now one of the reasons the species is threatened. Clean gravel and sand is essential, particularly for juvenile pearl mussels. If the stream or river bottom becomes clogged with silt, they cannot obtain oxygen and die. Having outlined the critical part this mollusk plays in the ecology of our rivers and river salmon and trout population, I now turn to what happened on the River Lion in Perthshire, when two contractors destroyed an internationally important colony of this protected species. The court heard that hundreds of years of pollution had been caused with work to the River Lion on a hydro scheme which was so disastrous that the basic repair bill ran to almost £1 million. The two contractors were found guilty. They were fined £6,000 and £5,000 respectively, but their company has since been liquidated with £143,000 of debts. One of the men also admitted previously destroying the colony of freshwater pearl mussels during another hydro project at Dalmally in Argyll. I should also say they were given 8 years to pay their fines. So not much deterrent there, although I understand it was the first prosecution in Scotland. And then, Presiding Officer, as the species champion, I submitted quite a few parliamentary questions relating to this species, the work they do in our rivers, allowing salmon and trout to survive, and also the damage done to the River Lion. And I have to say, I would describe the Scottish Government answers as ranging from disappointing to dismissive. And that is why I've brought this debate to the Chamber, because more needs to be done, and the Scottish Government have the power to ensure our freshwater pearl mussels survive. There also needs to be more enforcement from police wildlife crime officers and an assurance that this will not be diminished as a priority given the new single police force. There also needs to be more rigorous enforcement of cross-compliance and the Environmental Impact Assessment Agriculture Regulations 2006, as well as an assurance from SEPA to strongly protect the water environment, even when this conflicts with economic growth and new hydro schemes. So finally, Presiding Officer, exploitation of freshwater pearl mussels has taken place since pre-Roman times. The earliest reference in Britain is by Julius Caesar's biographer, Suetonius, who stated that Caesar's admiration of pearls was one of the 3 reasons for the first Roman invasion in 55 BC. So surely, if the freshwater pearl mussel was a good enough reason for the Romans to invade Britain, then it's surely a good enough reason for the Scottish Government to make a commitment to do much more to preserve this incredible species.
Thank you very much. I call Claire Baker to be followed by Rob Gibson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'd like to congratulate Mary Scanlon for securing today's debate on the freshwater pearl mussel, and also give my thanks to Scottish Environment Link for holding an information session in Parliament this afternoon. Can I also give apologies in advance if I have to leave the debate early due to a prior engagement. Today's debate is another example of the success of the Scottish Environment Linked Species Champion initiative. As the champion of 2 species, the puffin and the lesser butterfly orchid, I understand that putting your name to a threatened species is not enough, and we must be active in offering our political support to protect them. The enthusiasm of MSPs is being matched by the support we are receiving from the charities and organisations promoting their species. Like other organisations, RSPB and Plant Life have been very helpful to me in providing support to raise issues impacting on the species, from the long-term challenges around climate change to the impact of the recent storms. The relationships the initiative has created are helping to raise the profile of Scotland's biodiversity. It's not that long since many of us were in this chamber debating the 2010 biodiversity target, which Scotland, along with other countries, failed to meet. Concerns were raised then over how many threatened species play an important part in our biodiversity. The UK has a large proportion of species threatened within Europe, and we have an important responsibility to make progress on these biodiversity targets. As we have already heard, the freshwater pearl mussel is one of the most critically endangered molluscs in the world, and as such is worthy of championing. In the recent aquaculture and fisheries debate, my colleague Graham Pearson spoke about illegal cockle fishing, and this bill is taking measures to improve detection and prosecution. It is not simply enough to pass the legislation that defines the ban for pearl or indeed cockle fishing. We must make sure the enforcement measures are robust enough to deal with the issue of any illegal fishing that may take place. The species is protected by the Wildlife and Countryside Act, but this has not stopped reports of illegal damage to pearl mussels taking place each year. And in the past 5 years, the Police and National Wildlife Crime Unit has recorded at least 10 incidents per year, and estimates put the number of suspected crimes as high as 30 annually. The reality is the detection and thus enforcement of illegal pearl fishing is extremely difficult, as offences take place in often remote areas of the country. To their credit, Scottish National Heritage, the Police and the National Wildlife Crime Unit have run awareness-raising events to highlight the signs of illegal pearl fishing. And at today's briefing, Dr Peter Cosgrove from Aberdeen University told us about the work he does with estates and land managers to raise awareness. So as we near stage 3 of the aquaculture bill and move on to the future work that's planned by the Scottish Government, this might be the chance to reflect on whether more measures need to be taken to support those working to protect the freshwater pearl mussel from illegal fishing. The freshwater pearl mussel thrives in clean, fast-flowing rivers and streams, so it is positive that more than half of the world's recruiting population exists in Scotland. However, the population is declining rapidly, and illegal pearl fishing is not the only reason why freshwater pearl mussel is absent from a third of the rivers it once populated, nor from a further third of rivers where no freshwater pearls are being produced. They are also at threat from pollution. Clean gravel and sand is essential for their survival, particularly for younger mussels, and if the riverbed is clogged with silt, they will perish. The pollution does not just directly affect the mussels, but also the fish, such as salmon and trout. As RSP briefing highlights, tackling illegal activities is also about the enforcement and close monitoring of the Controlled Activities regulations. They raise their concerns about illegal activities damaging water quality and habitat going undetected or enforced. And while compliance with CAR is part of the solution, RSPB also identified that there needs to be more rigorous enforcement of cross-compliance with the Environmental Impact Assessment Agriculture Scotland Regulations 2006. So today's debate has highlighted how iconic a species for Scotland the freshwater pearl is. Admired and coveted around the world, we have the responsibility to address the decline and secure their place in Scotland's future. I am pleased that Mary Scanlon will continue to champion not just their survival, but hopefully, along with others, oversee their ability to thrive in Scotland again.
Thank you very much. I should have said speeches of 4 minutes this evening, please. Rob Gibson, to be followed by Jamie McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I congratulate Mary Scanlon on this debate. I agree with many of her arguments and with those of Claire Baker. But I think some of the cultural elements of pearl fishing is something we should put on the record. In the song The Summer Walkers, Callum and Rory MacDonald of Runright penned a verse that refers to the heart of my constituency in North West Sutherland. And since I'm not encouraged to sing, I'll just have to read it out. Have you stood out at Colbackie at the time the sun goes down, or upon the king of campsites in the hills above Bray Tongue? That's when music filled your evenings. It's so different now, this world, for you were the summer walkers and the fishers of the pearl. That's the pearl mussel that the Scottish travellers were far famed for fishing, as were the Irish gypsy travellers. These far-off days of the 1950s and 60s were the end of thousands of years of exploitation of the stocks of pearl mussels by these travellers. And Tim Neat's book, The Summer Walkers, in 1996, delved into their culture in the footsteps of a tradition collecting expedition by the folklorist Hamish Henderson, who joined the Stuarts in Sutherland for their summer walk. The publisher Berlin noted that in the summer walkers, Essie Stewart and Eddie Davis are major players. She was born in 1941, was given away at birth, totally unofficially. She came with a letter saying that, quotes, I was given to Mary Stewart of Rammersteig. Mary Stewart was the daughter of Blind Ali Dall, possibly the most famous of 20th century traveller storytellers, whose stories go back far beyond the Romans, indeed right into our Celtic past in Brittany and many other places. So possibly as one of the most famous tradition bearers in Scotland, as Hamish Henderson found out. Essie's mother was by blood less than half a traveller, but Essie lived the traveller life from the day I was born, she said, till the day I married, and then for 25 summers I was out on the road as the wife of a pearl fisher, Eddie Davis. And Essie Stewart is a constituent of mine, and I know her very well, and their cultural history, which is kept alive in the Mackay country, Guich Mackay, which is the Gaelic for the country of the Mackay, refers to the area of North West Sutherland that I mentioned there. Their motto is that we value and respect our past as much as we strive to make our present and future secure and vibrant. We are on the edge, and what a beautiful edge we are on. That means thinking about the Pearl-Mussel and the clean rivers, which we've heard about. They also give talks and talk about the pearl fishing memories of the travelling people. Now, the travellers' walking route set out from the Kyle of Sutherland and took them by many of the North and West Sutherland straths, glens and rivers, which were the havens of the long-lived Pearl-Mussel. But its near extinction by overfishing, pollution and climate change led to protection in 1998, but also a string of offences, 45 of which have been in the last 4 years. Only a small number reach court, and the problems of corroboration, as in other wildlife crime, are in play here and are something which needs to be addressed. Now, river basin management planning, a captive breeding and release scheme and awareness raising is key to the future of statutory action to help the Pearl-Mussel. Presiding Officer, I look forward to reading the Minister's response, as I have to beg your permission to leave the debate early to attend an unexpected urgent piece of business, but fully support this motion by Mary Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Jamie McGregor to be followed by Richard Lyle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Well, I think everyone would agree that the Pearl-Mussel, or Margaritifera, as it's called, has a wonderful champion in Mary Scanlon, and I wouldn't want to be anybody who interfered with it. I think she's the first MSP species champion to have secured a debate on her species, and she's to be commended for this. I will take this opportunity to name-check the two species I'm championing, the narrow-headed ant, as mentioned by Mary, and the marsh fritillary butterfly. I also thank RSPB Scotland and Scottish Environment Link for their briefing material today. And in conducting research for today, it was fascinating to learn more about the biology of this species. As well as its long history in Scotland, to which Mary referred, it is one of the longest living invertebrates in existence, with a lifespan of 100 years or more. One specimen of 134 years old was found in Estonia, and according to the verbal briefing we received today, it is possible there are freshwater mussels in Russia which are over 200 years old. Look at all the history that has passed them by, let alone the water. And an adult mussel can filter 50 litres of water a day, an amazing volume given their size, something which is very important for water quality. In the past, in Scottish rivers, they were fished, and some of the pearl fishermen were clever enough, using reversible calipers, to be able to open a mussel, check if there was a pearl inside, and extract the pearl and close the mussel without significant damage. But these people were experts whose families for generations had followed this way of life, this way of hunter-gathering, and who wanted to make their livelihood sustainable. Modern-day illegal chancers and cowboys, just using penknives, just leave a trail of death and destruction, and what has been there for literally hundreds of years can be destroyed in minutes by sheer ignorance and greed. And as we've heard, despite now enjoying full legal protection, there are real concerns about the population numbers of what is a critically endangered species. Indeed, by some estimates, it is in the top 400 most endangered species in the whole planet. Threats to the species come from the aforementioned illegal pearl fishing, but also habitat degradation or destruction, pollution and climate change. And the declining population in some areas of wild salmon and trout, an issue I have raised many times before, is also an important factor as pearl mussels spend the early part of their life cycle developing harmlessly in the gills of salmon and trout. These are the spats, the future seed corn. And the salmon and trout are the taxis that take them to their future living quarters. Isn't nature wonderful? Decline in salmon and trout stocks is a particular concern at the moment in the West Coast and North West Coast, in the Highlands and Islands, and it's essential that the reasons for these declines are more fully investigated, as it appears that East and North Coast runs are faring much better. Protecting and enhancing our stocks of pearl mussels is therefore another reason why we need to better understand and respond to the declines in salmon and trout numbers. If we do not have salmon and trout in our rivers, we won't have pearl mussels either. It's all the same ecosystem. In terms of the public tackling this very serious destruction of pearl mussels in the search for the rare pearls found in 1% of pearl mussels, we must send them, they and all of us in this Parliament must send out a very clear message that now this is illegal and totally unacceptable. And if people see suspicious activity or shells lying about on riverbanks, they should not hesitate to contact their local police station and ask for the wildlife crime officer. And in conclusion, Presiding Officer, today's debate is welcome, and I'm pleased that it has helped raise awareness of the very real threat to the future of this species. If Scotland and other developed countries are to persuade less enlightened nations on the need to conserve their endangered species, we must preserve and be seen to be preserving the rare species we are lucky enough to have on our doorstep. Thank you very much, and my apologies to the Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I now call Richard Lyle to be followed by Alison Johnson, and we'll ignore the ringing phone.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking Mary Scanlon for securing this motion on an important and concerning issue in this debate today. As a member of the Rural Affairs, Environment and Climate Change Committee, it is of great interest to me to hear of the situation facing freshwater pearl mussels. Attending the drop-in session today, I met with Dr Peter Cosgrove and his team. Can I thank him for the information which he gave me, and also can I thank Bug Life also for the information. Capable of living up to 130 years, the freshwater pearl mussel begins its life as a minute larva. It is ejected into water from an adult mussel alongside 1 to 4 million other larvae. This is a remarkable event taking place between July and September. To live, the mussel must snap shut on a suitable host fish. The host of freshwater pearl mussel larvae are often young fish from the salmon family, encompassing Atlantic salmon and sea trout. The chances of a larva encountering a suitable fish is very low, and thus nearly all are swept away and die. Only a few are inhaled by Atlantic salmon or sea trout, where they snap shut onto the fish gills for 9 or so months, where finally they land on sand and begin to grow on their own. The reason for highlighting this process is to show the complexity, but also the beauty of the nature of the events that take place. Mary Scanlon's issue, I believe, is important, as freshwater pearl mussels are a crucial indicator of river quality, because they are more sensitive to pollution than any other river creature. The situation facing freshwater pearl mussels is that they are critically endangered and remain at risk from a range of factors such as water pollution, the ruining of their habitats, climate change, illegal pearl fishing and over-exploitation. Other factors arise, like most things, because of human error. We continue to pollute our water by the use of septic tanks, engineering works too compromising the habitats of the mussels, and, as ever, the problem with climate change, which we know too well has a negative impact on these mussels. Scotland is a country which is abundant in biodiversity. That is the variety of life. Biodiversity is essential for sustaining the ecosystems and the life systems that provide us with the food we need, the fuel to get around, the health we enjoy, the wealth we have, as well as the other vital services. We are all part of this biodiversity too, and have the power to protect or destroy it. That power is a privilege, and it is also a responsibility. The actions that we have taken have a direct impact on the life around us, and Mary Scanlon highlights the point well, that we must do something now to protect freshwater pearl mussel as well as other creatures in the future. The RSPB states urgent action is needed to protect remaining pearl mussel populations. I am sure, like me, members across this chamber will agree with those sentiments. There is never a quick fix to issues such as these, but there are actions that we can take to help alleviate this problem and stop it from getting any worse. Actions such as transfer of adult mussels to areas where it has gone extinct, cultivation of young mussels, release of juvenile trout, which have been infected with the larvae, into small rivers, but the main successes lie in habitat restoration projects, and also the essential role of salmon play in the life of the freshwater pearl mussel. The conservation of salmon and trout is also central to the survival of endangered species. The Scottish Environmental Protection Agency has begun to work on these addresses. In closing, Presiding Officer, I would like to once again thank Mary Scanlon for bringing this issue to the Chamber, and say as a grandfather, I feel it is important, right, and that this Parliament and this Government take stock of this issue and continue to address the outlined problems. In regard to the Roman link, I am sure that Julius Caesar invaded Britain to control the pearl trade. Let us ensure that we do take action so no one can say et tu, Brutus.
Alison Johnson.
Thank you. The freshwater pearl mussel has joined the panda on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Endangered Species, a list regarded by many as the barometer of life. It is fair to say that the freshwater pearl mussel hasn't received a fraction of the coverage that the panda has, and I thank Mary Scanlon for raising awareness of the importance of the species in this evening's debate. And I too have no doubt that Scottish Environment Link's innovative Species Champion initiative has already raised awareness of the challenges that many of our native wildlife species face. The freshwater pearl mussel finds itself on the red list of endangered species due to its unprecedented worldwide decline during the latter part of the 20th century. As we've heard, but it's worth repeating, pollution from pesticides, fertilisers and other contaminants, siltation, climate change and declines in host fish populations are all partly responsible. And these rare, long-lived mussels, who commonly reach ages of over 120 years, are very vulnerable too to disturbance from engineering works in rivers. Silt contamination makes it difficult for the mussels to feed and can kill adults. And BugLife has reported cases of river disturbance resulting in animals born when Charles Darwin was alive floating out of their beds and being swept into the sea. As Jamie McGregor commented, this is all the same ecosystem. I myself am honoured to champion the brown hare, but the point is that all species depend on a clean, protected and safe environment. Here in Scotland, the pearl mussel is on the brink. The pearl mussel population, like our own, is ageing. The youngest individuals in some rivers are 40 years old. And despite the fact that it's an offence to intentionally kill, injure, take or disturb freshwater pearl mussel or their habit, criminal activity remains a major threat. And as we've heard, enforcement is wanting and deterrents are often too weak to deter. So we need to ensure that there are sufficient resources in place to prevent criminal activity from further decimating this endangered species, and that such action is taken seriously. I'd like to thank BugLife and the RSPB for ensuring we understand the importance of this too often overlooked species. Members will note, and Mary Scanlon commented on this, in the very helpful briefing from the RSPB, while they welcome the wider range of sanctions proposed in the Regulatory Reform Bill, including fixed and variable monetary penalties, they are concerned that the duty proposed for SEPA to promote sustainable economic growth will conflict with strong protection for the water environment. The United Nations Environmental Programme reported previously that there are some 46,000 pieces of plastic now in each square mile of ocean, and much of this rubbish began its journey to the sea in our local rivers and our waterways. Our rivers and seas have, for far too long, been regarded as a convenient place in which to dump all manner of things. Our burns, rivers and seas are living, breathing ecosystems, yet general rubbish, from shopping trolleys to the ubiquitous plastic bag, are found in too many of our waterways. We need to improve and invest in education, protection and enforcement. We need to make sure that the most stringent regulations apply to these important ecosystems. I'd be very grateful if the Minister, in summing up, can provide details of what measures his government are taking to improve conservation and cleanliness of our rivers and their associated ecosystems, how we can further raise awareness of the importance of this species, and what further controls on illegal pearl fishing by limiting the trade and encouraging higher levels of reporting of suspicious activity might be applied. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now call on Paul Wheelhouse to respond to the debate. Minister, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank Mary Scanlon for her motion and raising the importance of the state of the freshwater pearl mussel, and I echo the points that have been made about the species champion roles, and I think they are proving to be highly effective. As we've heard from Mary Scanlon and others, freshwater pearl mussels are dangerously close to extinction. However, despite low numbers in absolute terms, Scotland's rivers are a global stronghold for the species. For example, in Scotland, as others have said, there are at present 106 known populations of freshwater pearl mussels, and this equates to around half, indeed rather than a third, half of the world's population. And that is why we in Scotland have a special responsibility for this species. The importance of the freshwater pearl mussel goes beyond their rarity. The presence of these rare freshwater mussels is an excellent indicator of water quality. It needs pristine water to survive, and its continued presence in our river systems is a sign that there is a clean, fresh water which we all need. In many ways, the species is, in fact, a bellwether for the condition of our ecosystems. As Mary Scanlon, Jamie McGregor and Richard Lyle have acknowledged, the life cycle of the mussel is itself fascinating. Not only do pearl mussels live for more than 100 years, but also the very youngest pearl mussels cannot survive without living on fish gills, and they therefore have a symbiotic relationship with our freshwater fishery. As Richard Lyle and other members have said, young mussels harmlessly attach themselves to the gills of juvenile salmon or trout over their first winter, before they detach themselves to live in the riverbed. They have, therefore, as I say, a close relationship with salmonids, which themselves are a vital part of the ecosystems of Scottish rivers. The freshwater pearl mussel inhabits coarse sand and gravel beds, fast-flowing, non-calcareous streams and rivers, that's ones which are alkaline. There are approximately, not alkaline, I should say, there are approximately 69 recruiting or viable populations where juveniles are present in Scotland, mostly in the north and west, as others have said, with scattered records of the species elsewhere. Few viable populations occur elsewhere in the British Isles or even the rest of Europe. And turning to the conservation status of the species, a £3.5 million Life Plus Nature project, Pearls in Peril, is being led by SNH. It runs from 2012 to 2016 and in Scotland focuses on 19 special areas of conservation which have been identified as the most important for the pearl mussel's continued survival. The project aims to improve water quality and physical habitat for the benefit of the species and to communicate with local, national and international audiences to raise awareness of freshwater pearl mussel conservation issues. A national survey of freshwater pearl mussels to determine the species status has just begun and is expected to be completed by early 2015. Ongoing projects include assessing the success of reintroducing freshwater pearl mussel to rivers that once supported them. The hope is that it will be worthwhile seeding more rivers, a point I think made by Jamie McGregor. Undertaking further research into the relationship between freshwater pearl mussels and their host salmonids, and Scottish Natural Heritage and SEPA are sponsoring a PhD student at the University of Stirling who, among other things, is investigating the effects of high flows on freshwater pearl mussels and so what climate change-related increase in rainfall might mean for the species. And finally, management measures aimed at enhancing salmonid fish stocks are also important, as these fish are, of course, an essential link in the pearl mussel life cycle. Other works which have been undertaken and which inform our strategy for the species conservation include, as mentioned by Rob Gibson, river basin management plans, which were published in 2009. And these set out objectives to reduce the impacts of diffuse pollution from agriculture on our water environment. And given the species' need for purity of water supply, this is critical to the future of the species. Certain key catchments containing some of Scotland's most important waters for conservation are failing to meet environmental standards due to impacts caused by diffuse pollution. It's an ongoing challenge which we are responding to, and these catchments have been identified by SEPA as priority catchments. It is especially important we take action to improve their water quality. And in the first river basin planning cycle, 14 of these priority catchments have been selected using a risk-based approach. 3 of them are in the South Esk in Angus, the Dee and the Devon in Aberdeenshire, where there are some important freshwater pearl mussel populations. And the focus of this work was to collect, if you could be brief, please.
Mary Scanlon.
Yes, very brief. Can I just ask, has any additional action been taken following the incident at the River Lion?
Minister.
I'm coming on to that, Mrs Scanlon. Just if you could bear with me. The focus of this work was to collect information on diffuse pollution sources, but information on other impacts on the river, such as erosion, sedimentation, was also collected. This information has been discussed with land managers, and where possible, immediate mitigation measures have been put in place. The work has been carried out with the support of local land managers, NFU Scotland and associated fishery boards and catchment groups. I have spoken at length about what we are doing to conserve the freshwater pearl mussel, but clearly, though, we also need to protect the species against illegal activity, which can in some cases irretrievably damage entire populations. And the legal framework protecting freshwater pearl mussels is strong. Freshwater pearl mussels are a UK Biodiversity Action Plan priority species and are included on the Scottish Biodiversity List. The species is listed on Annexes 2 and 5 of the EC Habitats Directive. They are also listed on Schedule 5 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. And from 1998, as others have acknowledged, it has been an offence to intentionally or recklessly kill, injure, take or disturb freshwater pearl mussels or to damage their habitat, to possess mussels or pearls collected since 1998, or to sell or advertise for sale freshwater pearl mussels or their pearls, unless done under licence from Scottish Government. Therefore, crimes against freshwater pearl mussels come in two forms: pearl fishing and illegal works. And it is an irony, as I think Mary Scanlon was the first to acknowledge, the main problem with those stealing pearls from our Scottish species is that very few mussels will actually contain a pearl. This means that hundreds will needlessly and wastefully be pulled from the riverbed, even immature ones which would not even be capable of yielding a pearl, to be discarded dead on the riverbank, and that is a disgusting waste. As these mussels are slow-growing and can live to 100 years, it's easy to see how this thoughtless destruction can wipe out a whole colony in one go. And this is why we must pursue those who perpetrate such a despicable act. However, the majority of damage comes through illegal works carried out in and around rivers. Anyone wishing to carry out this sort of work must first obtain appropriate licences and carry out work under supervision of SNH and SEPA as required. That is non-negotiable, and land managers must realise there is no excuse for ignoring this requirement. Frustratingly, incidents causing damage to pearl mussels could be avoided in all cases if consultation with SEPA and SNH had taken place and the proper consents and licences were obtained. And we recently saw a case in the River Lion where this catastrophic chain of events, which need not have happened if someone from the firms involved had taken responsibility to ensure proper processes were in place. SNH have part-funded a Special Investigations Officer, Charlie Everett, who is actually in the audience today, from the National Wildlife Crime Unit, with a priority function of enforcement against freshwater pearl mussel crime. And just picking up the issue about the numbers, while it's true to say, I think Rob Gibson mentioned 45 over the most recent period of 5 years, encouragingly, in the last 2 years of that 5-year series, the numbers dropped to 4 and then 2 cases. So hopefully the impact of the work the National Wildlife Crime Unit are doing is having an effect. Charlie Everett has led an NWCU operation to assess if there is demand for those pearls under the counter in Scottish jewellers, and it appears from that work that pearls are not in high demand in Scotland. Clearly, however, there is a demand somewhere for these pearls, and I'm advised that work has been done with the UK Border Agency to help detect trade out of the UK and gather information about foreign markets. The Paw Scotland Partnership for Action Against Wildlife Crime is finalising work with various organisations on the reporting of suspicious activity. They are also preparing briefing material and maps for wildlife crime officers in targeted police stations, and even exploring the use of genetics as a new forensic tool. So I hope that addresses some of the points raised by Alison Johnston regarding detection. And as part of the large Life Plus project, moves are afoot to recruit a river watcher to launch river watch schemes in North and West Scotland, where the species is most strong. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not only pearl fishing that threatens the species, but pollution and illegal river works. Time is counting against me, but suffice to say, happy to meet Mary Scanlon to explain the measures that are put in place regarding hydropower schemes and the work that SEPA are doing on environmental impact assessment to ensure that the concerns that have been expressed about the watering down, if you like, of the requirement to protect the environment in regard to SEPA's duty are quite untrue. I mean, I would hope, as the Regulatory Reform Bill unfolds, that people will see that this is about making regulation more coherent and transparent, easy to understand, rather than diluting its impact. If I may, Presiding Officer, just to conclude, this is the Year of Natural Scotland, and I'm very grateful to Mary Scanlon again for her attention to such an important species. We all have a duty of care to protect our native species, and whilst it may not have the charisma of the red squirrel or spectacle of sky-dancing hen harrier, The freshwater pearl mussel is a species of global conservation concern, and they play a vital role in the ecosystem of our rivers. It is incumbent on us all to ensure that they are protected for future generations as part of our natural heritage, and the Scottish Government intends to play its full part in that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And that concludes Mary Scanlon's debate on the importance of the freshwater pearl mussel. And I now close this meeting of Parliament.